going to get the panel started. This is our panel called A Career in Gaming and Esports. And I'll go down the line and introduce everybody, but it's kind of great that we have this panel in person because some of these people I haven't met in person, and it's been like 2 years. Can you believe that? Anyway, to get things started, I will go to the next slide. And I'm Ansley Partosa. I am the head of the Greater Gaming Society. We are a community group here in San Antonio. And big announcement randomly, even though you just met me, I finally own it, for real. And we're going to make it a nonprofit. So I'm very excited. So let's go down the line.
Hello, I'm Sam Elizondo. I am the Director of Gaming and Esports for TechPort San Antonio, which is going to be San Antonio's esports arena being built next year. So it should be complete by April 1.
Hi, my name is Travis Yang. I'm the head esports coach for Texas A&M San Antonio.
My name is Sebastian Oguin. Oh, wait, what? My name is Sebastian Oguin. I'm part of the Rainbow Six Siege team for St. Mary's.
Hello, I'm Victoria Martinez. I'm a Fortnite captain for St. Mary's Esports team. Hi everyone. Oh, can you hear me? Yes. My name is Kaitlin Teniente. I'm the Director of Esports and head coach at St. Mary's University.
Hello, I'm Edward Mayberry with the San Antonio Public Library. We have an esports committee and an adult gaming committee.
All right, so these are a bunch of different people here from San Antonio who contribute to the esports and gaming in our city, which is super cool because sometimes people think that esports is just online, but clearly they're all offline. So who are we? These are our logos and things of that nature. Greater Gaming Society, St. Mary's, and TechPort and stuff we just went over. So we're gonna go over some topics that we think could help better the community and understand like what is esports? What is gaming when someone's kid is on the grind for like hours and hours and then suddenly they're like, hey, can I go to a tournament? And they come back with money. What is that? So, what kind of games count as esports? And I'll open this up for the panel discussion. I'm mostly going to moderate and just read off questions. So, what kind of games count as esports?
That's a really big question. I guess I'll say, as a pretext before I answer the question, if any of you have questions, I don't know if Nancy wants to take questions at the end, but me personally, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and I think we'd love to answer. In my mind, for esports, number one, it has to be competitive of some nature, right? That's kind of what separates esports from just a casual game, which nothing wrong with that. But kind of in today's age, when we look at professional esports, it also has to have the viewership. So you can have competitive games, for example, but if it doesn't have the viewership and it's not accessible to a large audience, then in my eyes, it doesn't necessarily qualify as like a tier 1 esport.
So similar to what Travis said, I think esports is any kind of video game that can be played in an organized setting. So that can mean a lot of different things. That could mean, tournaments right here at San Japan. That can mean something that's played remotely but streamed to a live audience on Twitch. But I think for me it really is any online game that's usually played in a team setting that's organized in some fashion. But what kind of game does that mean? That could be, depending on that definition, that could be League of Legends, Valorant, but also, can we include online chess?
Yeah, it's true. Definitely, E obviously, I think most people would assume and agree that it's electronic sport, right? So I think chess might qualify there depending on who we're talking to. Something that a lot of people also count out is speedrunning. So it's not just the competitive 1v1 where you're playing somebody else or you're playing a team of people. There's also the idea of kind of manipulating a game and trying to set a record for how quickly you can complete that game. So esports, does encompass not just team sports, but also individual sports as well.
All right. Oh, also, there's going to be QA at near the end of this panel. Also, we have lovely prizes, so
Socks.
stick around.
Oh, my favorite Christmas present.
It's not even Christmas.
So,
Christmas is September.
How old do you have to be to get into esports?
Anybody want to field that?
I'll take that one.
I say 16.
I'm gonna go with maybe an old-fashioned answer in that it depends on the rating of the game. So if it's E for everyone, then everyone. If it's rated M, then
18 plus.
yeah, 18 plus, act accordingly. So I think that's a general guideline, but I don't know the rules.
I'll kind of reference just my own experiences, right? Obviously, a lot of you probably play games or you've been playing games. And as much as our parents would like us to follow those guidelines, unfortunately, you know. Sorry, just to go back, at what age you have to be to get into esports. I mean, if you compare esports to traditional sports, there is no limit in traditional sports. You can start playing basketball literally as soon as you're able to walk and pick up a basketball, you know. Obviously, it takes time to get good and to devote to it, but for my students, I don't necessarily set any limits. Obviously, they're already, by nature of being in college, they're of a certain age, but I'm talking to kids as early as middle school and beyond, especially if we look at the newer games coming out. One of the best examples being Fortnite. I mean, Fortnite, we've seen kids as young as in elementary school playing it. And now again, whether they should be playing that because of the violence, that's probably a separate topic, but the fact is they are. And so I think that's a really interesting conversation, because then that leads into things where I think, as Ansley touched on at the start, is what happens when a kid brings back money or wants to go to a tournament. Well, then other regulations come into play, right? Then you have to be of a certain age, legally be able to receive money or to sign up for certain events. But in just pure regards to playing the game, playing an esport, in my mind, I don't think there's necessarily any age requirement there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think San Antonio Public Library being a great example. Again, if you are very young, obviously there's a distinction between taking a prize pool home and earning a pair of socks for your winning at a tournament. So San Antonio Public Library hosting their own events for kids where it's Mario Kart and something lightweight. And that's a great opportunity and way for somebody to be kind of injected into the space and be able to participate. Obviously, state, local legislation having really the lay of the land and being a priority in who gets to participate and take home a prize pool. Typically with a parent's signature, they're allowed to accept a prize pool. I think at 14, depending on the state, 16 is more or less the consensus though.
So Sam, thank you for that. So at the San Antonio Library, we do have events that encompass all age groups. Maybe because of COVID, they're all virtual, so it's hard to actually verify people's age. Therefore, we tend to keep it to Mario Kart, more Nintendo Switch-based games. Therefore, the mature ratings aren't affected by that. And we do offer simple prizes for things of that nature. But we tend to have things for children all the way to adults. So just based on your skill set and what games you prefer to play, that's what we offer.
Awesome. So next question is, how can someone get involved in esports locally? And I think you kind of touched on that with the San Antonio Public Library. Can you guys expand more on what we can do for esports here in San Antonio?
Sure. So now we have a lot of programs. We have an esports committee, we have an adult gaming committee with San Antonio Library. We're trying to develop programs that allow us to interact with our patrons virtually because we can't meet in person. So therefore we have many programs. We'll check our calendar, myself.org, that's a little plug, /events. September 9th to 11th, we're having a National Video Games Day. It's going to be Animal Crossing, Mario Kart, Smash Tournament. We also have a monthly series called Laura and Yanel Play a Game. So they go to Steam, they play a free game, and it's on Twitch and Discord. And along those lines, we're trying to develop our Discord channel and Twitch channels to attract more people to come to our programs and engage them that way. And let them know that we do have a sports committee, esports committee. We do have an esports community here. That's why we first interact with everybody else. I'll give a little background. So last summer, we all were on maybe a 9-episode series on YouTube about esports in San Antonio. So that's how we all met each other, but we never met each other in person. So we talked about a lot of topics, the future of esports, future esports, diversity, education with Kaitlin, Sam, and Travis. So there's many topics in esports that we can talk about. I would encourage you to check out those playlists, but it's just so many things we can do. So we're trying to encourage as many people as possible to get involved, and we'll also give them the references of Sam, Kaitlin, and Travis, that if they're interested, they want to participate in sports, they have tryouts, they get involved in that nature.
I'll say I'm not a native of San Antonio. I moved down here, and I do see that hat, so I'll get that in a second. I moved down here from Ohio about a year ago, right before the start of the pandemic, so I was not familiar with the scene here. Fortunately, since the time I've been here, I've come to find that there's many ways to get involved. The beauty of it is that you can get involved kind of however you're comfortable with, at whatever level. Obviously, Kaitlin and I can speak more to being involved at the collegiate level, right? If you're naturally going to college and you still want to be involved, that opens up a lot of avenues there. And I think Kaitlin's done a great job with her program of creating positions, not just being a player, which I'll let her expand upon. But for example, with individuals like Sam with his PC cafes, right? Being able to work there, potentially just to play there. People who are just hosting events through the library. You can get involved as a volunteer. Even events like San Japan, right, which not necessarily, right, it's an anime convention, but they do things related to gaming. That's a great first step to get involved if you're interested in production and commentary, right? Maybe things that you're not necessarily fully experienced in, but you want to get your foot in. These volunteer-based positions are a great way to just go and be like, hey, I play this game. Maybe I'm not the best player at it, but I can at least speak on it, and I want to develop my skills. And a lot of times people, if you're passionate about it, people will be willing to take a chance on it.
I believe we had a question from the crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I walk up
Yeah,
to
you
the
can tell the mic. It'll everyone will probably do better.
Hello. You mentioned Animal Crossing being in esports. How would that actually be
Well, we don't
qualified as
consider
an
it
esports?
esports game because it's more of a, when we consider Animal Crossing, we have a program for Animal Crossing. I consider more Smash, things of that nature. We try to develop relationships with our community and promote esports. So technically, the San Antonio Library, we don't have esports games because there's no first place prize money, there's anything like that. It's just more of a competitive thing and more of a, community friendly atmosphere to play things in.
Okay.
So we do offer more Nintendo Switch games because of the age restrictions. We want to make sure it's able, everybody's able to play the game.
Okay.
Also, turnip prices, I'm just saying, there's probably a way that could be a crime. To kind of piggyback off, there's a lot of organizations in San Antonio that are also trying to stand up things. You have the San Antonio Museum of Science and Technology. There's some great initiatives at the high school level and some at the middle school level, really for some of our school districts now. Everybody is really taking some of their first strides into understanding and trying to integrate gaming and esports into curriculum for high school students. So if you're a high school student right now, or a middle school student, or you have somebody that's in your family that's interested and passionate about that, definitely check, with their teachers. Typically it's, surrounding the tech labs and that space, computer hardware management, because it is being adopted. On top of your local venues, LFG Cyber Cafe is a business that I own. It's a LAN cafe. We have about 40 PCs. Otaku Cafe, which is a phenomenal anime, venue, gun club, bunch of cool stuff in there, as well as Shenanigans. You have Shenanigans Gaming as well, and so they provide some really cool stuff. And your local tournament organizers. I mean, you have Chris Sines right here from Texas Gaming Empire, does a phenomenal job and is doing some really cool things in this space to kind of grow it outside of those realms, more of the public space, open entry, so on and so forth.
Yeah. And I like that you introduced those other venues because a lot of internet cafes and other places that will have video game tournaments are popping up in San Antonio. I wanted to mention personally also that the San Antonio Public Library has really great events for gaming, and I think they've always had it since I was a little kid because I've been here for a while. I competed in a little DDR tournament, did not win, but that doesn't matter. You were there, and it was a really good time.
Gain the experience.
That's right.
Yes.
It's all about having fun and making connections.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
So I think what it really comes down to is kind of like put yourself out there, find people who are interested in the same thing, and places like San Japan or going to some PC cafes or connecting with Greater Gaming Society online is the place to start. And if you don't know what it is that you want to do or interested in, like, you really gotta start somewhere, put yourself out there, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, I think that's a lot of the good that comes from these kinds of things are, this isn't, a at the end of this, it'll be an open forum to ask any other questions that you might be interested in, because who knows, maybe there's something that we don't cover up here that could, you know, give you the first few steps to getting into gaming and esports.
So I also want to add that Travis and Kaitlin also stressed that you don't have to be the top player to be a participant or a teammate on an esports team. You have to realize that you don't have to be the top sniper. As long as you have teamwork, you know how to compete, you communicate. It's all about those other things that make you a good esports player. Also, the background, graphic artists, organizers, promoters, all those things are needed for a successful esports community. So keep in mind those things also.
Okay. Next question is, what type of jobs are there in esports?
Take that one? Okay, cool. A lot. So, I've kind of been in this space where I've been pushing an agenda in San Antonio to help people understand the whole scope of gaming and esports. Most people take it as, oh, well, like, you just want to be a competitor. You want to be that 1% of people that make it on a main stage. And that really sells our ecosystem really short, Really, gaming and esports, there's a place for everybody, whether you're into data analytics or computer programming, graphic design, community management. I mean, anything that, any job that it takes to host an NFL tournament or an NBA tournament or any of those fun things, that exists inside of gaming and esports. And so, really, from a production standpoint, from a creation standpoint, in the STEAM space, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for people that are passionate about sciences, or passionate about computer hardware, passionate about art, to find a place and a home to really leverage that in something that they're into, which is gaming.
One last thing to add. So, building off of what Sam said, again, there are a lot of things that already exist, right? A lot about esports and gaming is the roles that help support it. But the other thing too that I think almost everyone here can speak towards is, if something doesn't exist yet for gaming and esports, do it yourself. Like, go out and start it, right? Like, if you want to see something like Animal Crossing competitions where turnips are the prizes, like, let's do it. Be that first person.
This doesn't necessarily answer the question directly, but I'll reference my kind of how I got to where I'm at right now. And I think that'll speak towards the trajectory of esports and how quickly it's growing. I grew up playing games, and in high school I started the StarCraft 2 team right when it came out, so it's been 2010. I kept growing that just kind of on my own. It was really fun. By 2017, 2018, I was at a point where we were flying players across the country, big tournaments and lands. And then I graduated college around that time, and so when I had started college as a freshman, the job I'm in right now is a head esports coach, and similar to Kaitlin's position, it didn't exist at all. Collegiate esports really didn't even exist in 2015, 2016. It wasn't until literally 2017, 2018, the year before I graduated, I finished college, that we started to see these positions start to pop up, and I took my chance. And fortunately, because I had those experiences that I had developed on my own, and even, I wasn't getting paid for that, that was just a passion project, those actually translated right onto a resume, because I was team building, I was managing, doing sponsorships, organizing events and travel, and sure enough, those skills actually applied quite nicely into the job that I'm doing now. And that ties in perfectly with what Kaitlin just said, which is if the job that you're trying to do, or maybe that org that you're trying to volunteer for right now isn't taking positions, just do it yourself, right? Just make a Twitch channel. If you want to pick up commentary, or you want to learn how to cast something, just get the game and just start streaming it on your Twitch channel and just practice. You may not have the viewers immediately, but if you stick to it, you'll gain that following, and at the very least you'll get better at it, and then you can go and reapply, to that volunteer position or that internship, wherever that may be.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's interesting with where we're at with gaming and esports, very similar to kind of how football started. It was the 20s, Harvard versus Stanford, they took a set of rugby rules and they kind of converted them, and that's what became American football. And over that lineage, you have this tremendous industry, right? We're talking millions upon millions, perhaps even billions of dollars a year, all focused towards that one event. And we're getting to watch esports and gaming kind of evolve the same way. It's very much the Wild West. It's the first person to make it to California and start mining gold, right? If it's not there, you have the opportunity to create it for yourself. Similar to Travis, I started the Esports and Education Foundation, which was a nonprofit for San Antonio, designed to help schools kind of navigate the space and make sure that they were implementing, gaming and esports in a way that was conducive to students. We started LFG, which was a cyber cafe, and I just kept doing these things because San Antonio didn't have it, and I wanted it for, you know, kids that were just like me, and hopefully, you know, my kids when they're old enough to participate in stuff like that. Now to where ASM Global, which is the company that employs me, they're an international company, an international venue management company, and so they'll be taking the management of TechPort. I'm the first position in their entire organization for gaming and esports. They had never previously employed anybody like me to do this specific job, which is to take care of the LAN center, oversee our gaming and esports events. And so, you know, if you're interested in the space, really I encourage you to start practicing now because we will be sought after. It's just now that people are starting to determine, oh, we can't market to gamers, you know, the same way that we market to a football audience. It takes a specific skill set and a specific understanding of the medium as well to make sure your messages are, you know, relevant. And so we're now starting to see people taking it seriously. I mean, USAA, I think, dedicated $500,000 to a Call of Duty tournament, and that was their first foray. That's a company here in San Antonio for marketing funds. So really, if it doesn't exist and you think it should exist, there's a distinct possibility that it's your opportunity to just kind of take it by the horns and do that for our city. Cool.
Yeah, I loved all of those answers. I'm very excited the fact that everyone has such a good understanding of the vast majority of jobs and that we're kind of trailblazing the fact that esports exists now. And yeah. So next question is, what should students be doing to get a job in esports?
I guess that's me, I guess Kaitlin myself. What should students be doing to get a job in esports? That's a big question. I have this conversation a lot with my students kind of on a daily basis. You know, I think the good thing about varsity esports existing now is it kind of helps to build that pipeline. And I'll keep my answer kind of short, right? You're going to school to get a degree. Number one, education first. Esports, whether you're doing it to compete, you're doing it because you truly think you can be a professional player, or if you're doing it to work on your commentary, whatever, you know, ideally that adds to your college experience, and potentially it adds to your resume coming out of college. Taking that into gaming and esports post-college, I think our students as varsity collegiate, you know, competitors and peripheral positions, they are unique because now you're coming out as one of the first generations of higher ed students that have a degree, and you can say, I was on an esports team. Oh, I already have 4 years of commentary experience. Like I worked with a team, I already commentated these events. I already helped organize those tournaments. So when you go to these companies that are endemic to the esports space, like your, you know, LAN organizers or DreamHacks or local entities, that really just sets you apart tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think for this, the first thing that comes to mind of like if you really want to work in esports, volunteer. Just whether it be at a convention or a tournament or you managing your Twitch, setting up the branding, your marketing, all of that. Have some kind of idea of what interests you kind of overall. Is it marketing? Is it being a manager of some sort? And try your hand at it. You would be amazed the kind of technologies and skills that you're going to pick up that aren't just unique to esports. Those are transferable skills that you can take to a lot of places. But I want to turn this over to Sebastian and Tori since they are current students. And I mean, y'all have seen me work behind the scenes. Y'all have been with me for broadcast. What do y'all think, about this question, and what advice would you give to students who are interested in esports?
Definitely get out there. You can't get a job in esports if all you do is you sit in your room and not meet people. You definitely have to get out there and you have to meet people. You have to, I wouldn't have met Travis. I wouldn't have met Travis. I wouldn't have met Travis if I hadn't gone onto the team, if I hadn't emailed Kaitlin and applied for Rainbow Six. I wouldn't have met anybody here. I wouldn't have met any of my teammates. I wouldn't have met anybody if I had just not done it. So you definitely have to get out there and you have to start it.
To add on to that, to get out there, we have a St. Mary's Esports Discord, and we welcome the whole community. It's not our varsity one, but it's just to welcome everybody, and we give different, like we post on there different tournaments and everything. That way we let people know how to get involved with esports, how to play, you know, different competitions that you could be part of. We also invite communities to like try out. We have broadcasting team, like that's part of esports still. Like what would we be without commentators, you know? It's like, that's also part of it. It's not just playing, it's like, and like we've said previously, it doesn't matter about your skill level. You can learn. It's the willingness to want to be better that gives our attention to you. So, yeah, just get out there, you know?
So can you join the Discord even if you're not a student of St. Mary's?
Yes, it's for everybody. It's a community
Do you have a
Discord.
link on your website for that?
We sure do. I'll meet with you right after and I'll get you set up.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, it's great that you guys promoted your Discord because that's a very good way to stay connected with people, even if we can't meet in person. Getting yourself out there can also be online or having, I don't know, whatever social media is the most poppin' right now. In San Antonio, I think it's Facebook, but there's also Twitter and what have you. But, so great answer.
Discord for sure. I think most organizations in San Antonio, whether that be TAMUSA, LFG, St. Mary's, I think everybody has a Discord. You might have to dig a little bit for the link every once in a while. But a search on Facebook does a good job of like San Antonio Gaming, and you're going to get a laundry list of, you know, San Antonio Smash Ultimate and the Greater Gaming Society. All those entities are going to come up because they do operate in a professional capacity, so they should have a presence there.
Yes, I forgot to mention the Greater Gaming Society definitely has a Discord. Last question is, what is the average span of an esports player?
Whose question's that?
I nominate Travis to take this one.
I'm old, so be careful what you say.
Probably because I'm already retired.
That's what I was just going to say. Don't forget you're also retired.
So I mean, the average span, it's unique, right? We can't really compare it to necessarily traditional athletics where you have Tom Brady who's now 40-something years old and winning Super Bowls. In the world of esports, unfortunately, when we look at the top levels, it really does come down to, you know, your mental acuity, your reaction speed, your hand-eye coordination, and just if you can keep up. And it's a lot of time that you have to devote every day, right? Those professional players that you may watch on your favorite teams, they treat it like a full-time job. They're playing at least 8 hours a day, and they're just grinding it out, and burnout is a huge issue. A lot of times they're starting a lot earlier in their life, which was touched on in the previous question, but if you have a kid who's starting at, you know, 10, 11, 12, and by the time they're 20, 21, 22, they're kind of hitting their peak. I think that might actually be kind of the average age across professional players in esports right now, and usually by the time you're
What age?
21, 22, 23. But
I got the back part of this.
right, so
It's like, but.
right, not everyone, right? Because you just have some players who are older.
I got it.
But usually, right, it's like a bell curve, right? So when you get to the top end, when you get to 26, 27, in the 30s, the representation for players at the top level unfortunately does decrease, right? And so the similarity there, fortunately, with traditional models of sport is that just because your playing career ends doesn't mean you're just out, right? When you look at lots of traditional sport industries like football, a lot of them go into commentary, into analyst work. They may go work for the teams that they play for. And we see that a lot in esports, right? A lot of your favorite content creators were former players. A lot of people who run teams now used to be players. You know, Nate shot with, 100 Thieves, right? He used to compete himself for many years. So it's not all doom and gloom. But again, the reality is that the time span is not only does it start earlier, it obviously it ends earlier. And maybe for a separate topic, but right, when you start earlier, you're just younger, right? You're less mature and you have worse time management. And so unfortunately, that's something that's the space is working on educating and improving, but the reality is that kids will grind a lot. They'll get really good by 16, 17, but their time management is horrible. And a lot of times they'll burn themselves out because they won't make that team that they're trying to get on in the first year or two, and then they'll just quit and they'll drop off. When I feel like, you know, if they had a healthier model and more structure, whether that be through education or not, but some kind of better structure and understanding. I feel like that could potentially push that peak age from early 20s to instead, into the late 20s and 30s, right? Because there ideally be more players continuing to compete right now.
Before Travis gets
Lame
his
bastard.
response,
Yeah.
I want to add something that I've kind of noticed over the past 24 months is that, yes, professional esports, the average age is pretty young, but in the college space, what I've been noticing is that players are coming, or prospective players are coming back to school in the form of graduate degrees. Like our program, we've got 30 athletes overall, and 5 of them are grad students. So they are a little bit older, but I think that's a pretty positive trend, and I hope to see it continue. But I think overall, maybe at the professional scene right now, it's really young. But I think in the college space, it's broadening a little bit more.
Yes. So just to I just want to repeat the question for everybody. What is the average span of an esports player? And we said that esports, anybody can participate. We're just talking about overall competition. So at the professional level, I think Travis is mostly correct. A lot of times, the age is determined by the game. If you play Fortnite, you play Apex Legends, those are very reactive Twitch games, right? Where you're gonna benefit from having great eye-hand coordination and terrific reflexes. When you break into games that are a little bit slower, Counter-Strike and Dota, that age group tends to expand a little bit because those games are played off of, being able to strategize over long periods of time rather than make like quick decisions and be able to 180 flick and hit somebody in the head. There's a tremendous amount of Counter-Strike players that are actually in their 30s. And they may not be entry fraggers, and what I mean by that is they aren't the first people, breaking into the bomb site or trying to make that first move. There are people calling the strategy for those younger players to make sure that the strategy portion of the game is maintained. And that's just talking about it like the professional tier 1 level. Obviously in the collegiate space, a lot of these people are just recruiting anybody that's interested to a great extent. Maybe perhaps for Travis and Kaitlin it may be different where they want, some of the top tier talent and they're actively going to events like this and trying to find out who's really good at video games to recruit them to their college. But, they will allow anybody to play. So at that point, even the VFW, we stood up the first LAN center in the VFW, which is the Veterans of Foreign Wars in the nation. And they're moving towards having leagues for veterans and being able to compete through the VFW. And those guys, we're talking about veterans of the Afghan War, the Vietnam War. So these guys are not spring chickens by any means, but they are able to compete against other veterans across the nation, thus giving them, the technical title of an esports player. Travis. That's my soapbox. I'll step down. Yes, sir.
Do you have any insight onto, you talk about those Twitch games and those very reactive, heavy games? Why would you say that the top players in a game like Super Smash Bros. Melee are so old? You know what I mean?
No,
compared to the top players in other games, because that game is also very reactive on your feet, and it's like. Do you have any insight onto why that might be for that game specifically?
Isam is not old. The man just chooses to be bold.
Okay.
That's it.
He's by comparison with a general esports player, Isam is in his 30s. He's in his 30s.
All right,
I guarantee. FGCs are a great example of where you see kind of that shift point, right? Where experience a lot of times will trump that innate talent, right? When we're talking about frame data and we're referencing an ESAM or somebody who's been in that space for a very long time, these guys have grinded this game for so long that they're predicting what a lot of these kids who are excellent at the game are going to do because they've seen it 100 times, right? They weren't just playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, they were playing Melee, they were playing N64, they were playing Brawl, so they have this lineage of experience that does give them that ability. And when we're talking about reaction time, a lot of, in my opinion, from Smash, specifically, that's reaction time mixed with predictive analytics, right? They're saying if I do this guy's going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, to be able to stop me from doing that, or being able to stop me from doing that. And so all of those predictive analytics, those come with time. That's not just reacting to getting hit, that's creating an opportunity and a strategy similar to chess, right? It's not that specific move that you're worried about. It's 4 moves later where you're going to reap the benefits of it. And so those older players have a much better understanding of that process, and they capitalize on it and are able to stay relevant for longer. But those young bucks that have, they're 13, 14 competing at this top tier level, they're young and capable, and soon they will have that knowledge. And at that point, that's where ESAM starts to, be beat and eventually gets retired. That's just going to happen eventually, no matter what.
To piggyback off what Sam said, because it just came to my head, because I think you mentioned Fortnite and Apex as being more reactive games. Just the nature of those games is already the context, right? Because Apex and Fortnite are kind of randomized games, right? Where you drop, it changes every game. Sure, the map may be set for a few months, but it'll change. Where games like Counter-Strike and games like Valorant and even Smash, to an extent, right? Those stages that you play on don't change. The positioning, where you need to stand, the strats, and how you react based on certain things. That's pattern recognition, that's muscle memory, that's thousands and thousands of hours of playing that same character or that same position on that same map over and over again until, like Sam said, you're not necessarily getting kills based off reflex. You're getting kills based off good positioning and good understanding of what's about to happen. So games like Fortnite and Apex, it's not that they are any less demanding or any less difficult, they just rely on a different set of skills. Fortnite, for example, I had Fortnite at Ashland University, where I used to work in Ohio, and we had a team of 12 or 13 kids, and I used to be one of those guys when Fortnite came out where I was a hater. I was a Counter-Strike player, and I was like, man, Fortnite's a joke, there's no strat in this. But as I watched these kids play, and just the raw amount of information they had to process and decide on in a split second, and then all the inputs they had to make at the same time, I gained a lot of respect. And that really changed. Fortnite was fortunately a game that changed my perspective for the better. So.
To continue off of that, I myself am a Fortnite player, so I understand what he says. At first I was like that. I chose PUBG over Fortnite. And I was like, oh, it's too much building. And over time, I just found it fascinating how somebody can just build in an instant, and they'll be halfway across the map.
The lighthouse on top of you.
Yeah. It was very different, and I myself, tried out as well for the Rainbow team, and it's completely different set of teamwork and everything on how to work. Rainbow is more of a strategic, like they said, holding positions and everything, and Fortnite, like you say, is more random. And so when I see this question, I also think of it everybody's talking more about prospects, oh, they start off young and they're high, but there's also people out there that they start out late and then they end up getting really good and they're older, but it's I think you're just, if you...
There's still hope for us, everyone. She's giving us a chance.
If you find it interesting and you end up being really good and you're considered an old person, it doesn't matter about age, it's just skill level, and if you actually want to dedicate time to it, that's what it's down to.
I just want to talk about also the experience, because I hate Smash. Because to me it's just smashing buttons, so I hate it. But I used to play Street Fighter. I'm a Street Fighter player, so I got pretty much used to it. I've played a while. My biggest accomplishment was at PAX 2018. I was working PAX with Library, and before we opened up, the Mongol people would play Street Fighter, and I beat them. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I just beat these, and these dudes work for Capcom. So it's experience. I played Street Fighter since I was a kid, so I just know what they're going to do and how to counteract what they're going to do. It's just based on experience and anticipating what they're going to do. So the age of older people and experience does count sometimes in more strategic games like that.
Yeah, Travis.
I want to clarify. I mean, Edward and Sam bring up great points. And again, I always like to reference it back to traditional sports, right? If you're a veteran player and you're on the older end of your sport, there is still a value, a large value in your experience, right? Obviously, if on a football team, the majority of players aren't going to be all veteran players. The majority are going to be newer, younger players. But there is a huge need to keep those important veteran players who have those experiences and have them share with their newer teammates. And that's exactly how it is in esports too. When you look at Counter-Strike teams, for example, they usually try to keep one or two veteran players who Sam said, they're not your entry backers necessarily, or they can kind of play the dumpster roles, we call them in Counter-Strike. But
That's rude. Yeah.
yeah, well,
support.
they
You
have
say support. You didn't have to say dumpster.
they haven't played the roles that are where they don't necessarily have to make those reflexive plays as much, and they put the newer players in there. But they keep those veteran players on board because again they have that game sense and thousands of hours, and that's what they bring to practices, and they impart that on their newer players.
Give that whole deep.
We need support players, so you know.
That's
They're
right.
not bad.
That's
We
right.
look for support players.
Other
Yes.
question. So for the esports, it also includes like co-op gaming, right? Where you have a team of people like working together, not just like fighting each other all the time, right?
Yeah, Overwatch is a good example of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, man, is there a Left 4 Dead? I want to say Left 4 Dead does have like a league where, it's your team working against, obviously, the adversary. I want to say they have a league, but there are games, I mean, co-op-based games that have something like that, sorry.
I wanted to throw in, even though I'm moderating, sometimes people can consider esports or like gaming tournament style, like they might think that's the only kind of competitive gaming, but if we just branch out to competitive gaming, it could be as simple as like competitive rock, paper, scissors. Or, right?
That's a
Or
thing.
like competitive chess. I've seen...
Rock, paper, scissors is a thing, for sure. Big thing, much bigger than you would realize, yeah.
Yeah, see, everyone knows the strats for that. Like,
Triple rock. They never expect triple rock.
yeah, so like there's things like that, and then there's other games that are unconventional, which I wanted to throw out there. I don't know if they fit into the realm of esports, but competitive gaming like speedrunning games, or I saw Stardew Valley had a competitive like build your farm to the highest percent or something. I don't remember how that went. I remember Pokemon also had a fashion show in Animal Crossing. So whoever came to her island and had like a really cute outfit, she gave them a prize. And I feel like that's kind of competitive in its own way. But,
Like competitive Minecraft. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bed Wars.
Yeah.
I can't keep up, but there's people in that game that are just like, as soon as the game starts, they're like halfway across the map. I don't even know how they got there.
And not just Bed Wars, I mean, for...
Already have full diamond armor, enchanted sword.
Yeah. In the education space, they're using it to teach kids coding. And so there's not only like competitive rebuilding where they have like an object or something that the kid needs to build, or adult for that matter, but they also have like coding challenges built into Minecraft as well that are considered an esport because they're competing, and it is obviously electronic as well. So yeah, there's tons of other ways that we see that kind of display out.
I totally forgot about Bed Wars and the capture the flag
Yeah.
mods of Minecraft.
Do you have a question? Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, I will open it up for Q&A. So Q&A time.
Just, if y'all want to, just get in line behind him when I ask a question. My question is, where do you see VR competitive games?
I'm not sure like what the future's gonna look like for VR, but a really good example would be like this. I went to this like arcade place that had a VR headset, and I tried it on, and it was like a Star Wars thing, and I could just imagine like that. I didn't think of it now. I didn't think of it then, but I'm thinking of it now as like you would play as like a guy with a lightsaber, and I could just imagine people like having esports like lightsaber battles, or like they're trying to like 5v5 or 3v3 with like the blasters and the lightsabers and stuff. Like, cause you can't look behind you, so like if you have a teammate behind you, like that'd be a really good esports game.
Honestly, there's just on that question. There's already games out right now that have competitive play, right, in VR. I don't know the exact titles, right, but they're kind of like 60. I've seen one that's like 32 versus 32, like realistic gunplay and stuff like that. Onward, yeah, that's exactly it. There's not necessarily a viewership around it yet, or necessarily a competitive circuit. I think just the accessibility of VR is still a little bit too high right now, the barrier. But technology-wise, I think 5 years from now, VR will be a recognizable like segment of esports. that's coming from me. I have like over 1,000 hours in VR chat, I'll be honest. So I know that the technology is there. That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. It'll be a part of the future. It's still in development. It's just hard to get a lot of people on VR at the same time right now. But yeah, there's league sport for sure. Onward has its own like operating community as well. So they have tournaments, national tournaments, fundraising tournaments all the time.
With esports actually just now coming into power, like as of like just a few years ago, it wasn't even here before when all of us have been playing games since we were little children or anything. So there's actually a lot of the community that actually doesn't own or have access to a PC. Right now I'm only a console player. I do only play on Xbox currently. I would like to play across a bunch of the other platforms, but right now esports is only on PC right now. So what would be your advice in order to actually get into esports? Or either it could be through console or we could do it through PC, but it's not like we could go to the library and like download a game in order to actually play it or start practicing or anything like that. So what would be your advice to console players or people that don't own a PC yet to be able to get into esports?
We actually have console players for the Fortnite team that are at collegiate level. And there's plenty of games that actually are cross-play. Fortnite, Warzone, we did like a team builder where it was cross-platform and everything. It's not always about being a PC player. I myself have a PC, but I was a console player at first, and I'll play if I feel like it, Fortnite on controller instead of PC. Like, if you're a console player, there is a place for you guys. There's a bunch of tournaments that are with consoles as well. Like, it doesn't need to be that, oh, well, esports players are only PC players. Like, that is not the case. It can be console players as well.
I want to say that due to the awareness of the esports community, that Fort, Stephanie, and Sam, they're going to build a $60 million esports arena. And if I'm not mistaken, it's going to have areas for PC game and things of that nature. So you want to be involved, you can go there and play the PC games there also.
Yeah, that's correct. So LFG is a LAN center. It has PCs. You see a lot of the tournaments played on PCs just because from a hardware standpoint, it's a little more conducive. And there's plenty of people that come into my store, and you see it all the time in competitions where they'll bring a console controller and plug it into a PC to utilize that just because that's a matter of comfort and that's what they prefer. If you're looking for entry, I don't know if you're in high school or college, obviously they all respectively have their own programs, but there's places like LFG, Shenanigans, places like Otaku Cafe where for a small fee, I think our store for PC specifically, it's a $5 venue fee that gets you 1 hour computer time and $1 per hour thereafter. So for $7, $8, you're able to hang out there for 4 hours, and that's a pretty good chunk of time to be practicing whatever game you're in or you're interested in if it's not offered on a console. But the question really is, what games are you interested in? Because that's going to determine more or less where you're going to spend your time, right? If you're only interested in Counter-Strike, that's exclusively offered to PC. You can't play that on a console. But there's a myriad of games, so there's plenty of ways to participate for sure. And Techport will have a 60-seat LAN center as well. It's going to be priced pretty competitively with LFG to make sure that the community has access to it. We don't want to price anybody out. The digital divide is a problem, I think, as a whole. And so we want to make sure that everybody's able to access it regardless of where they're from and be able to, again, get on that high performance hardware that is a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 buy-in if you were to buy it yourself.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. Hi. Me as a person, I run tournaments on a local level. I run Smash Brothers in the city, but it's only at a grassroots level. So it's more of like a hobby. It's my personal interest of mine. As someone I really want to work with esports, what would be like your guys' ideas of the next level of wanting to collaborate with higher ups to head towards that esports level?
Send an email. Honestly, the worst thing that could happen is that somebody says no. And that goes for event collaboration, potential sponsorship, or prize donation. If you have a plan laid out of what you're trying to achieve and how you want to do it and how so-and-so or whatever organization can help you achieve that goal, that's like, ooh, you're already head and shoulders above a lot of other people. So send an email, and the worst anyone can say is no.
I want to...
Oh, just
Sorry.
real quick, right, if you have the experience, right, if you've been running events, number one, that's amazing, that's great. The next step, as what Kaitlin touched on, one option, right? Try to find someone, a local business, a local entity that you can partner with, right? Maybe it doesn't become a full-time job in that first year or two, right? Maybe they provide some kind of stipend, and then you demonstrate that, hey, you can do this, you can deliver on it, and in year 3, year 4, they really like it, they turn that into a full-time job. That's how a lot of it still is in the world of esports right now. Another part is, right, maybe you don't want to necessarily go directly that route. Find other people, right? Because maybe you're really good at organizing tournaments, but maybe you're not so good at marketing. Find someone else who has been doing marketing, right, for esports stuff or events, and partner with them, right? Because maybe they have the same aspirations, but they're like, man, I'm really good at promoting, but I have nothing to promote, right? Find those people to partner up with, and then you can approach people at a national level and be like, hey, we can host your events here in San Antonio for you, or find out local entity and be, kind of same approach as I said earlier.
Do you have an LLC?
No, you're not.
Step one. It's hard for most big industry or anybody that's going to be able to give you sponsorship dollars and marketing dollars to be able to pay you without a licensed entity to pay. A lot of entities have a hard time just paying out an individual because they also can't be held liable. And so a great example is Port San Antonio and Techport, right? Paying me, if they pay me directly, let's say they want me to go market an event, or they wanted you to organize a tournament. Let's say you do something wrong, and that reflects badly on Port San Antonio. They cannot hold you liable as easily as they can hold your company liable. So there's a matter of security risk there that kind of needs to be understood by the gaming and esports community. And it doesn't matter what your LLC is, but as long as you have an entity to function as, that's going to help kind of put you in a position where they say, oh, this person's taking it seriously. They have a business license. This is somebody that we can partner with going forward. Even if you're just a tournament organizer, whether or not you have a brand or a team or whatever the case may be, I would absolutely start there, because that's going to put you on a great path to building those business partnerships, not just like networking partnerships and personal partnerships, if that makes sense.
I was gonna throw out there, shout out to the very great Smash tournament organizer who asked this question. But yeah, so for me, there's different paths that you can do. You can try and apply to work at a established place like, I don't know, Panda Global, and say, hey, I can organize tournaments, here's my resume, and I got people to vouch for me. So there's that. Or you could go Sam's route, which is create an LLC and create a business. And that just depends on what you want to do. Like if you want to own that, then you do need to make an LLC and try and make your business, because it is kind of hard and awkward to make an event or get paid by people. I know this from experience because, as I said before, Greater Gaming Society was a community group. And then when people say, oh, I want to sponsor your events, and I'm like, cool. And then they're like, all right, here's a lot of money. I'm like, I have a bucket. And that's what I kept our money in for a while. But now we got a bank, so we good.
Cool. Thank you. Cool.
I think I'm a little bit shorter. Everyone, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Stephanie Garcia with Port San Antonio, and we are building the esports arena that's going to be located on the southwest side of town. So I would be really remiss if I didn't talk about the kind of skill sets and the talents that gamers have that can be applied to our other key industries that we have here in San Antonio, which are three, which are cybersecurity, aerospace, and also robotics. So is there anything that you guys are doing at the college level, university level, that's really fostering those kind of opportunities? Because we need to develop that workforce pipeline, and they're looking for folks like you guys who have those capabilities. And Sam mentioned earlier, predictive maintenance, people who are quick on that, they're thinking, they have that gaming acumen, they're really looking for that kind of talent. So my question is, are you fostering that at that level at all?
I'll take this one. So in our program at St. Esports, we have something called co-op, which is basically all things student staff. So this first year, we've been building out our broadcast staff. So that's going to be our shoutcasters, commentators, producers, observers, camera people, to get them exposed to that kind of work. Whether or not they're going to turn that into a career doesn't matter at this point. It's more so empowering them with those kinds of skills and that kind of opportunity. opportunity. As we continue to grow our college program, our varsity program, we're going to continue to incorporate more student staff and more student leadership to help support the competitive side of the program. So that also means event coordinators, social media coordinators, community coordinators to help really not just build the program, but continue to maintain and foster what we've built. So the hope is, even if the majority of my students or athletes never go on to work in the esports industry, they at least took something of value, experience-wise, that they can transfer to something else in life, whether it be their personal relationships, their, the next workplace they go to, or their passion project, or something useful. So we're still in our second year. We've built out one portion of our co-op, with more to come in coming years.
I want to throw in, we have like 5 minutes, so let's rapid jab these questions and answers.
Shotgun.
Can you hear me? First off, thank you for having this panel. It's been really, really informative. My question is kind of an open-ended one, but it's more geared towards the esports arena, the esports programs that have been started at the schools at A&M and St. Mary's, and I'm very curious, like, how were those conversations? If you have difficulties talking to the school districts, so saying, hey, we want to start this thing, were they apprehensive at first? Were they open-minded? And if they were kind of closed-minded about it, what was the turning point that said, hey, let's get this esports arena going, let's get these esports programs going? Because I'm really curious how that went.
I can only speak for that. So the high school space is something I've been working on for 4 years. It's very difficult, right, to be able to convince a group of people that have the best of intentions for their students, but have a very hard time understanding the medium in which I want to bring to those students. And so for me, being a wayward student, the education system didn't speak very well to me when I was young, and I had a hard time going through it because I just wasn't engaged. I wasn't interested, and I felt that there were other things, specifically playing video games, that I probably wanted to do at that time. So I was a pretty terrible student. But having walked into these rooms and sat down with superintendents and had these discussions, the crux of that argument is at a very base level. Playing games, esports, whatever, if they're on a keyboard, they're learning to type, and these are skill sets that, from, again, the standpoint of teamwork, if there's a student that's introverted and he may be attracted to video games and he joins that team, that individual is now being forced into a position to learn social skill sets that he would not have probably garnered for himself. And so doubling down on those points and saying, look, this is what you're offering, and we understand that it's entertainment and that it's kind of fun and exciting, but here is all of the other things that these students are going to be able to walk away with. NASIF is a terrific organization. It was like a $500 million trust designed to create curriculum around gaming and esports. If you are an educator and you're trying to kind of get your teachers or your superintendent or your principals interested in that, go to their website and look at their curriculum. You can take any subject in our standard testing and our standard teaching environment and apply that to gaming and esports somewhere, and then reference the fact that this is a middle ground. These are creative students that aren't traditional athletes, they're not traditional academics, they're somewhere in between, and gaming really does do a good job of bringing them into the fold. And like 90% of the time, when you say that, it starts to make sense, because you'll start to see graduation rates pick up, you'll start to see attendance start to pick up, because they want to be playing video games, and the only way to do that is if they're passing their classes and they're attending class, right? So that was my experience. 2 minutes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm long-winded, I apologize.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Yep.
Hello, Vincent Valdez. I just want to make it brief. I appreciate y'all's time, by the way. I'm into the NFT space and gaming pretty much all my life. Do you think esports would ever go to digital, capture digital highlights of moments? Say for example, Uga or Ninja, they're playing the game and they get a kill and it highlights that moment and turns it into the NFT space. What's your opinions on that?
I think the NFT space will propagate first to art design, skin trading, digital trading, right? GameStop is investing heavily in that because, they used to be a game trading company. Well, now everything's digital. So how do you trade a digital game? Well, you have to have an identifier, right? So NFT does a terrific job of that. In terms of what you're speaking about from almost an AI side, there is something in the works. I can't say a lot about that, but I assure you that, you know, as we draw closer to esports being more regarded as a traditional sport, well, people are going to start scouting. And when they start scouting talent, they're going to want to find ways to consolidate their time and make it easier. And if you've ever been to a pool, like a pool match for like, you know, the Super Smash Bros. Tournament, like LTC or whatever, you have thousands of people participating, and that's like terabytes, thousands of terabytes worth of data to be sifted through. So unless you standing behind that kid who you think might be really good, it's very hard to reference everybody, and I can assure you that that'll be consolidated soon. Whether or not NFT is a part of that technology, I don't know, but that will be a part of the future, is being able to scout and highlight moments so that somebody can go through and kind of process that information quickly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know if this is the right place to ask this, but I figured I'd ask anyways. I'm kind of part of like a team or like an organization where we're looking to help like teach players and whatnot, and I wrote down a question, which is like, how do I get main esports leagues interested in like a learning academy? And what would main esports leagues look for to promote and sponsor an academy? Like maybe get partners with the league.
That's a good question. So to clarify, right, you're an entity that provides kind of coaching or educational, right? And you're trying to partner with leagues, potentially teams, right?
More so with the league, but teams maybe. Sure.
Okay.
Like they could get on board.
To be honest, I would need to know more, right, about kind of the services you offer, but I'm aware of a few entities in the space that try to offer those services.
Okay.
From my perspective in the collegiate space, right, number one, I'm looking for value, right? Is this something like that my students don't already know that I'm not able to teach? You know, is it really worth the value? Is it worth their time? For a league, I'd imagine, depending on the game, you know, it just depends on, I guess I'd really just need to know more, like, is it an educational, like, are you trying to coach them in the actual game, or is it more things related to the game, like?
It's definitely coaching more about the game, but it's also making sure at the same time that whatever goals anybody has, whether it's game related or in real life, like we're just making them a better person and a better player all at the same time.
Right, I think that's a good thing to keep it quick. One good starting point maybe to apply or to talk with, like if that league has an academy league, for example, try to speak with that, and then you can run like a proof of concept for a year, right? And you have something then that you can take up and try to upgrade to like that main league, something like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, that was our gaming and esports panel. Thank you guys all for sticking it through to the end and asking all these awesome questions.
All right.